Good day, dear students. I invite you to home reading lesson. The title of our home reading lesson is The Brumble Bush by Charles Mercantile. This video lesson is prepared by the teacher of special disciplines of the English language, Mirieva Clara Sandirovna of Mangistau Humanitarian College, named after Murunjrau Singerbek Ulu. So welcome and enjoy this fascinating and wonderful world of home reading subject. Today's lesson is one of the series of the lessons devoted to the classical English literature. You will get to a wonderful land full of images, amusement, and delights. You will meet different characters during this lesson. The objectives: interact with academic content, reading, writing, listening, speaking. Demonstrate ability to think critically and solve problems. Describe the characteristics of the personages and analyze qualitatively. Charles Mercantile is an American writer. As the son of a teacher, Mercantile began studying literature and education after successfully completing his schooling at the University of Boston. Mercantile's entry into the Second World War prompted Mercantile to drop out of college to join the United States Navy. After the war ended, Mercantile left the army as an officer and completed his studies in Boston, but never worked in his profession. Even before the war, he wrote as a freelancer for various radio and TV stations. Until his death in 1959, he died of an accident. Mercantile lived as a freelance writer in New York. The works of Charles Mercantile: Call After Six, Dell, London, 1966. The Drum of April, Malabrook, London, 1964. The Girl Cage, Forsyth, Greenwich Con, 1959. His Days Are Grass, Little Brown, Boston, Mass., 1946. The Lonely Ones, New English Library, London, 1965. The Next Best Thing novel, Panzer Books, London, 1969. The Patterns of Sin, New English Library, London, 1968. Rage of Desire, Dell, New York, 1958. Tonight is Forever Stories, Popular Library, New York, 1941. And now, students, brainstorming moment of the lesson. What do you see in the picture? Okay, you are right. It's a happy childhood. And what is childhood? Do association work to the word childhood? Write down the words on every rays of the sun. For example, sweetheart, playmate. Good luck for you, students. In the world of childhood reign their laws, their own rules, unknown space. Children are completely different from adults. They are of a different height. They do not have such physical strength and mental skills. Often we forgot, like this, to be a child. We forgot the difficulties of our life, how to behave with adults and with other children. How do they react to everything around them? To understand this, let's first determine what childhood is. Childhood is the first stage of human development lasting for about 13 years. A person begins to understand the surrounding world and develops as an individual person. At this time, the character is formed. It is already possible to say on what the child will be when it grows up. And now, students, it's time for the new vocabulary. Listen, please, attentively. To recollect, вспоминать, искать, through, bewildering, сложный, сбивающий с толку, приводящий в смущение, қобалжулы, уайымдаулы, толқулы, frustrating, разочаровывающий, ашуланшақ, ламба бизнес, лесозаготовительное предприятие, ағаш өңдеу ісі, a frame house, деревянный каркасный рубленый дом, ағаштан ойылып салынған үй, pasture land, пастбище, жайлау, жайылым, to be possessive of, относиться как к собственности, собственнически, меншік ретінде қарау, to try desperately, отчаянно пытаться, қатты тырысу, to make endless attempts, предпринимать бесконечные попытки, шексіз әрекеттер жасау, to gain a bit of admiration from somebody, получить хоть немного чьей-либо любви, біреудің сүйіспеншілігіне ие болу, to wait for the exact proper moment, ждать самого подходящего момента, қолайлы сәтті күту. The excitement was building higher, волнение нарастало, толқу өсті. A consolidation prize, утешительный приз, жұбаныш сыйлығы. Learn these words, please. Let's read the story very attentively. You may pause the video.
As Fran Walker, one of the nurses of the Mills Memorial Hospital, was sitting between rounds behind her duty desk, she often recollected her childhood, which would return to her as it had existed in reality, bewildering, lonely, and frustrating. Her father, Mr. Walker, had owned a small lumber business in Sagamore, one of Indiana's numerous smaller towns, where Fran had lived in a large frame house on 6 acres of unused pasture land. The first Mrs. Walker had died when Fran was still a baby, so she did not remember her real mother at all. She remembered her stepmother, though small, tight-lipped, thin-faced, extremely possessive of her new husband and the new house which had suddenly become her own. Fran had adored her father, tried desperately to please him, and since he desired nothing more than a good relationship between his daughter and his second wife, she had made endless attempts to win over her new mother. But her displays of affection had not been returned. Her stepmother had remained constantly jealous, resentful, without the slightest understanding of the small girl's motives and emotions. Fran felt herself losing out, slipping away into an inferior position. She began to exaggerate, often lie about friends, feelings, grades at school. Anything possible to keep herself high in her father's esteem, and at the same time gain some small bit of admiration from her mother. The exaggerations, though, had constantly turned back on her, until eventually a disgusted Mrs. Walker had insisted she be sent as Fran Walker, one of the nurses of the Mills Memorial Hospital, was sitting between rounds behind her duty desk. She often recollected her childhood, which would return to her as it had existed in reality, bewildering, lonely, and frustrating. Her father, Mr. Walker, had owned a small lumber business in Sagamore, one of Indiana's numerous smaller towns, where Fran had lived in a large frame house on 6 acres of unused pasture land. The first Mrs. Walker had died when Fran was still a baby, so she did not remember her real mother at all. She remembered her stepmother, though small, tight-lipped, thin-faced, extremely possessive of her new husband and the new house which had suddenly become her own. Fran had adored her father, tried desperately to please him, and since he desired nothing more than a good relationship between his daughter and his second wife, she had made endless attempts to win over her new mother. but her displays of affection had not been returned. Her stepmother had remained constantly jealous, resentful, without the slightest understanding of the small girl's motives and emotions. Fran felt herself losing out, slipping away into an inferior position. She began to exaggerate, often lie about friends, feelings, grades at school. Anything possible to keep herself high in her father's esteem, and at the same time gain some small bit of admiration from her mother. The exaggerations, though, had constantly turned back on her. Until eventually a disgusted Mrs. Walker had insisted she be sent away to a nearby summer camp. They award a badge of honor there, she had said. And if you win it, not a single untruth all summer, then we'll know you've stopped lying and we'll do something very special for you. We'll give you a pony, her father had promised. Fran wanted the pony. More than the pony, she wanted to prove herself. After 2 months of near painful honesty, she finally won the badge of honor, and brought it home clutched tight in her fist. Hidden in her pocket while she waited all the way from the station, all during the tea in the living room for the exact proper moment to make her announcement of glorious victory. Well, her mother had said finally. Well, Fran began, with the excitement building higher and higher as she drew in her breath and thought of exactly how to say it. You can't hide it any longer, Fran. Her mother had sighed in hopeless resignation. We know you didn't win it, so there's simply no point in lying about it now. Fran had closed her mouth. She'd stared at her mother, then stood and gone out to the yard and looked across the green meadow where the pony was going to graze. She had taken the green badge from her pocket, fingered it tenderly, then buried it beneath a rock in the garden. She had gone back into the house and said, "No, I didn't win it," and her mother had said, "Well, at least you didn't lie this time," and her father had held her while she'd cried and known finally that there was no further use in trying. Her father had bought her an Irish setter as a consolation prize.
Students, answer the questions, please. Where did Fran Walker spend her childhood? What can you say about her parents? Describe Fran's stepmother. Why did Fran do her best to win her stepmother's affection, though she didn't like the woman? What was the new mother's attitude towards her stepdaughter? What was the reason of Fran's exaggeration? What do you think she said about her friends, school, and etc.? What way out did Fran's stepmother find to make the girl stop lying? Which phrase in the text proved that it wasn't easy for the girl to win the badge? Fran was eager to announce her victory, wasn't she? Prove it by the text. It was only once that Fran's stepmother believed her. When? Was it of any use? Answer, please. And now, dear students, let's do true or false statement. Fran Walker worked as a doctor at the Mills Memorial Hospital. Her memories about childhood had excited, in reality bewildering, lonely, and frustrating. She remembered her stepmother, though small, kind, and responsive. She didn't remember her real mother at all. She had made endless attempts to win over her new mother. After 2 months of near painful honesty, she finally won the badge of honor. Define true or false. Give Kazakh and Russian equivalents for the following words and expressions from the text and use them in the sentences of your own. Adore somebody, a good relationship, make endless attempts, display of affection, exaggerate, keep oneself high in somebody's esteem, eventually, Stop lying, do something special for somebody, prove oneself, draw in one's breath, stare at somebody, a consolidation prize. You work very hard for today, and now it's time for your homework. Retell the text on the part of Fran Walker, her stepmother, and one of the teachers at the summer camp. Give a character sketch of the girl's stepmother. Analyze the relationship between the girl and her stepmother. What prevented them from becoming friends? Do you think stepmother may have become mother for the girl? Whose side did Fran's father take? Give your grounds. Why was it so difficult for the girl to announce her victory? Which words of her stepmother killed all her 3 months' hopes and expectations? What did the girl bury beneath a rock in the garden? Was it only the bench? Why was Fran's childhood bewildering, lonely, and frustrating? Dear students, thank you for your wonderful work. The lesson is over. Goodbye. Keep calm and stay at home.